So my name is David Hutchful. I do a lot of things, including design thinking workshops or innovation workshops. And this case study I'm going to present actually came out of the last design thinking conference that we did. Shilpi Nanda, who's here, works with the ILO, and she's a fellow working with the NHIA in Ghana, the National Health Insurance Authority in Ghana. So she attended, and she had a problem that she had been tasked with, and she attended a conference and thought maybe the design thinking approach would be useful for doing it. And so we got together, and myself and Ashley, who was also a facilitator here last year, worked with Shilpi to help the NHIA kind of tackle this problem they had. So what I'm going to show you, or what I'm going to talk through, is the basically what happened during that stretch of work. And the goals of the presentation is, one, to show you how the design thinking approach is different from some of the typical approaches we use to solve problems, particularly in the public sector. And then also to talk a little bit about how you can use some of the design thinking tools to basically get buy-in in the organization. And so these slides were actually prepared by Shilpi. She's here. She's going to be on a panel later on this afternoon too, so she'll get in depth. Right. So just as a bit of a background, the NHIS was set up in 2004 to provide universal healthcare insurance to Ghanaians, and actually to anybody resident in Ghana. You can apply to get it. And over the years, I'm going to stand here because I was sitting there, and when people were presenting in that way, they had their backs to everybody on this side of the room, so I'm going to hide in this corner. But as the years have gone on, probably shouldn't have touched the screen, yeah? No, it's not. Where's Della? All right, let me just redo this again. Yeah, it looks like this whole thing has gone off. Somebody hit the power switch. Okay, I'll just go on. But over the years, from 2004 to 2016, their membership has been increasing and been going up, but it's kind of flatlined since 2016 at about 40%. And so they have about 40% of the people people in the country signed up, but they've not been able to go beyond that. And then one of the problems they realized was that people were not renewing their membership. Initially, there was some confusion when the scheme was rolled out. People thought it was a lifetime scheme. You paid once and you were covered forever. That was quickly changed so that you had to renew it every year. But that message got conflicted. So people were not renewing, and so the scheme numbers kind of plateaued at around 40%. So the problem that Shilpi was faced with is, how do you increase these renewals for the policies, for the health policies? This would be great to have a slide, but so basically they had three goals, right, for NHIA with this. One was expand population coverage, and in terms of the problem, what they were thinking was, can we design an efficient digital renewal system? Because in the current system, what you have to do is you get a card when you sign up, and then when it's expiring, you go into the district office or the closest NHIA office point. You go in there, you pay some money, and then it gets renewed. So they were thinking, can we design an efficient digital renewal system with a great user experience? Because if you've been to one of these NHIA offices, you kind of wait a long time. And you go from one desk to the next to get it approved. People show up very early because they know, and basically when we're doing the interviews, it turned out people will go early and they know they're going to spend their day there. So they've cleared their schedule, they've come to wait just to renew. So part of the goal was, can we make it more efficient? Can we make the experience better? Also, they wanted to reduce operational costs. NHIA has about 165 district offices. right? And so basically, that's where you're doing renewals. That means you have to keep all of those going. You have to keep staff at those places. And so it's costly to provide the ongoing services, but also to support the renewal. So part of the goal was, can we reduce the operational costs for running the service, and then also expand adoption they had a biometric identity service that they were using to kind of reduce fraud in the system. So they wanted whatever the new solution to be, what that was to, they wanted it to help kind of expand the coverage of this using this biometric system, so that they could further reduce the fraud in the system. This slide would have been nice to see, but maybe later you can come see it. But basically, NHIA has been tackling this problem for a while, and they've put a lot of, they've approached it in terms of solving it in a lot of the typical ways. So they've done a lot of research, and when we went in, we were quite impressed with the initial documents they gave to us. They understood exactly what the problem was. They had, sent in researchers. They, figured out, the user insights, what people thought was going on. But the research had basically given them insights into what the problem was, right? It hadn't really given them a solution or something that they could try out. And so let me step back. So basically, what I want to set up is the difference, or what the expected outcomes from what their traditional way of addressing the problem, which was, let's go out, let's do research, let's figure out what it is, let's try and pilot a solution, is to what the design thinking approach was going to be. So in terms of outcomes, from the user research, they got the user insights. They went out, they talked to people, they figured out, okay, there are long lines, people didn't always understand that they had to renew it, all those issues. On the design thinking side, we did that. We got those user research, but we were also able to prototype solutions. And so we were able to start, from the user research, begin to start thinking about how can we address this problem. Also, in terms of time, it takes them about 1 to 4 weeks to do these research, to go get the insights. And for the kind of workshop that we did with them, that was only in a week. So in a week, we were able to kind of get to the understanding of the problems from a user perspective, prototype solutions, and then also test them. And then also there's the kind of the issue of cost, right? When you do a research and it takes 1 to 4 weeks and you're sending out people in the field, it's quite costly. But with the design thinking approach, we're able to, in 1 week, basically do all of that and come out with, with solutions that they've tested solutions that they could actually implement, right? So the cost was much less. And once these slides come up, maybe I can show you more. So what I'm going to do now is talk you through what the days were like. So I think we did it over 5 days. So basically talk you through very briefly what we did each day. And now to just kind of set the scene, so Shilpi was kind of the point person within NHIA. The head director basically wasn't sure, didn't know what design thinking was, but the price point was quite low for the workshop we wanted to do. So she's like, well, let's try it anyway. And then Shilpi did a good job trying to get key stakeholders involved, because NHIA, you have your finance people, you have your the research department, you have your technology people. She was able to get key figures from all those departments to come and sit with us for 5 days. And Ashley and I were adamant about the fact that we want these people there the whole time. Obviously that didn't work out, but we were able to, make it work where when we needed to hear their voices, they were able to comment. So we got them together, and then we also took them off site. A lot of times the temptation is to do the work in the space that the people are in, but part of our goal was to teach them the methodology so that they could also go, like when we're done with the workshop, they could continue doing it. And a lot of times when you do it on the website, it's great because sometimes it's good to observe them doing their work and seeing what's going on. But when you're trying to teach them, just taking them out means, they can't pop out to go answer an email. They can't pop out to go answer, deal with a problem that comes up. So we got a nice office offsite and brought them all in. Had food and everything to keep them energized. And then we started tackling that problem. So the first day what we did was, and all these people who showed up were experts for the problem, for the areas that they manage for NHIA. So the first day, what we did was have them do a journey map for what the client experience is to renew. And because we had people from different departments, they were able to map it out from their different perspectives. What they thought a person, an NHIA client who wanted to renew their insurance would go through. A lot of it matched up, but it became very clear that they all started with the person wakes up in the morning and then comes in and tries to renew their, and they go to this desk and they have to wait for this biometric signal to come and then go here. They were able to map out all the pain points. But it became very clear that that's not the actual beginning of the journey for a user, right? There's a whole piece that comes before, which is more of a communication, education piece about what the NHIA is. And just from their research that they had done, people had misconceptions about what is covered under NHIA. People had misconceptions about, okay, NHIA is basically, they're going to try and get you the cheaper drugs, they're going to try and get you the cheaper care. So if you're at a certain income level, you probably shouldn't be bothering yourself with that, right? So there was a whole communication piece that came before the person actually going in, signing up for NHIA, and then coming back next year to renew. That, it was kind of unclear what happens there. And it was but what was clear was that whatever was happening there was greatly impacting people's ability to come back and renew. But they were able to kind of map that out. And because we knew these guys were kind of experts in their field, we had them we gave them the stage to talk about the problem, what they saw as the renewal problem from their perspective. And so they shared their expertise. They were very clear. We actually did a session where we said, what do you think the solution should be? And they took time, they wrote out the solution, and then they all presented the solution. And so that's what we did. On day 2, we called it expert confessions. So on the first day, so they confessed, they got everything off their chest. They felt like they'd been heard. So day 2, we split up as a team and we went out into the field. Some people into a slightly peri-urban area, some people into an area urban center, and they went in there to basically talk to people and to listen. And again, we had to do a little bit of prep work because they've done this before, especially the research team. So they knew how to do the questions, right? They sit down, they're like, what's your name? Okay, when was the last time you took insurance? How many people you have in your family? All of that. And so when we did the practice test before we went out to do the interviews, that's what they did. Because we said, go and prepare for this interview, let's do a practice thing. And that's how they meant to go out. And so then we said, we kind of did demonstrations of what the interview should be like. It's more of a conversation, right? You're sitting there, you're trying to understand this person, you're trying to understand what's brought them to that point that day. And so through that, we were able to contrast, okay, this is how you do a normal field research where if you had a survey, you wanted to cover things. But this is the type of, questions we want you to go to. We want you to really dig deep, the 5 whys we talked about. So we did a 5 whys exercise with them, and we encouraged them to use that when they went out to do it in the...
Sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just make an announcement.
Okay.
Sorry guys, we've had some sort of electrical issue. I think there was power out. It should be back now, but we've done all the investigations possible, and it looks like the projectors and most, if not all, the sockets are out. So the tech team is looking through it, and hopefully we'll have a solution to it soon. But for now, we'll have to do without the projectors. Yeah. So sorry about that.
All the acting and song and dance tricks will have to be put into motion now. Yeah. Storytelling, that's an important part with our PowerPoint.
So can you just share the slide?
Yeah, I can do that afterwards. We'll get you a version. Yeah, so day 2, we sent them out, and they were able to go get stories. Now, it was difficult, right? Some of them still went out, and basically, were asking questions like, so you like insurance, right? Basically leading questions and things, but some of them were able to kind of get the fact that, you're trying to understand the person and not, why, so you have to understand the full context of the person. And so we went out with them, they did a good job, collected a lot of information, and that was day 2. So then day 3, we came together again and basically used some of the tools. So, creating affinity diagrams. So everybody kind of read out the results. So for the interviewing, we had one person who was taking notes, and then one person leading the interviews. So when they came back, they all read out their notes. And as they read out their notes, everybody had their Post-it. and would write what they thought was interesting points, and you try to capture one concept, on one post-it notes. And then when they were done, they put it all up on the wall, and we did this, what's called an affinity diagramming session, which is putting together the different themes or different notes that seemed similar into one pile, and then coming up with a header for it. So then we had different themes that came up. And so we went through that, put that up, and that brought a lot of good insights. We started talking about, we went deep into the stakeholders. Who are the real stakeholders, clients for the NHIA? We went through, we got a very good sense of the communication, where the gaps were. And then also got a very good sense of, in terms of technology capacity, the typical client for NHIA, what was their technology capacity, what, tools do they have available to them. We were able to do all of that mapping. Which, we were able to then take all this information and go into the ideation session. And again, what we did on day one, where we were able to get them to just put out what they thought the end solution to be on there helped. Because when it came to ideation, now they were thinking outside those solutions, right? They have that on the wall already. You already have your app there. So even if you're still thinking about an app, you're probably thinking about it in a different way, or in a different context, or in a different flow, right? So one of the things that came out of the research was that and this was very interesting. So it was the finance guy, and we went out, did all these interviews, and his takeaway was, man, our staff are frustrated. Like when it comes to pay and it comes to all these things, they are frustrated, and this frustration goes out onto the clients. And so for him, it's like, we need to do something internally that helps our staff get, feel better about the job they're doing, so they can provide better care, right? Better customer service. And so when he started thinking about solutions, that's where his solutions were going, right? It was no longer, let's build an app to help the client, but it's like, let's focus on how we can help, when he started ideating. So at the end of the day, we came up with kind of two groups of ideas. One was around using a very simple app to try and speed up the renewal process, but there were very specific things that came out of the research that we were able to build in there, and I wish I could show you pictures, but there was that piece, and then there was also the communication piece. It became very clear that people needed to be, like, a lot of the advertisements and the way they were done really didn't communicate with people. And so we needed to kind of craft a messaging and also a delivery way that people were familiar with, so they could really understand the benefits of NHIA, and then also understand, the process of renewal and all of that. And so we decided to go with both of those in terms of prototyping. So we had a team that worked on, basically designing a USSD type application that could be used on any phone, because we realized not everybody has a smartphone. Most people were very familiar with mobile money, so we could do something with that. So we worked with that, and then we had a team that worked on messaging and communication, and they came up with a very kind of nice story format that could be done with radio stations and such. So that was day 4, just kind of building these prototypes. And then day 5, we sent them out to test with real life customers. And so they went again to different areas, but to places where people were there renewing their NHIA cards, and and the way we were able to get them to help us was, we told them, okay, if you join, we'll take your card and we'll put it in the process, and it'll be done in 30 minutes instead of like 4 hours. So we got a couple people who were very interested in helping us, but we sat them for the app. We walked them through the app. We got them to use it. We did what we call Wizard of Oz things, because we were trying to test the call center idea as well. So we were outside, and they'll call, and one of the staff members will pick and start responding, and they walk through the process. And we got a lot of really good feedback. One that I wanted to share with you was, when we did the USSD menu in the research, we realized that a lot of people were used to paying a lot of different bills, pay your water bill, pay ECG bill through the USSD piece. So we put pay NHIS on there as an option. When we did the test, and we give them the form, and basically we say the goal is for you to renew your membership. Go. We don't say anything else. And people were just stuck on that first page. They looked at it, they read everything, and they never, and so we asked them, so if you want to pay a bill, what do you want to do? Well, you click. They looked at it, and they just were lost. And very few people were able to go and say, okay, maybe click on that and move on. Two things that became clear for that is, people don't view your NHIA membership as a bill. It's not like your ECG bill where you pay. It's you know, their concept of insurance was very different than what we thought. And then also NHIS and NHIA were acronyms they weren't familiar with. But that's what's used on all the messaging everywhere else. So it became clear that if we're going to set up the service, we need to just have our own code. Once they get on there, it's very clear, you know, National Health Insurance Authority with all the different options that they have on there. But by being able to test and going through all the different flows, like we wanted to allow people to be renew for, you know, different members of the family, all of that. We were able to get really good insights into what this structure and what this menu was supposed to look like. So we did that, and then on the communication side too, you know, they sat down with people, they read back the messages like it was a radio show, and people would stop them and be like, oh, I don't get that piece, what are you saying, you know? It became very clear that we had to do it in a local language, and all of that. So they went out and, you know, started doing recordings so that they could, again, test with real users. So that was day 5, and then they came back, and so actually we did this on a Friday, and so then on Monday, which was kind of the 6th day, we kind of regrouped, and it became very clear what the way forward is based on the feedback, and then also based on the feasibility of actually implementing these projects. And so that's when we as facilitators, Ashley and I, pulled out. And Shilpi and the team actually went out, and because part of our goal was to build this capacity within the team. So they went out and did a lot of further tests, like outside Accra in different areas. And in the end, they were able to design a product. And I believe it launched in February. Yeah, and we did this work in January, right? Or in October. Okay, so yeah, we started in October. So by January, they were able to have something that's out live now, that's being used. You can renew your membership using it. Oh, okay. I thought you were saying the projector is up. Yeah, my time is up, but I'm almost done too. But the great kind of benefit of going through this process was one, you know, the individual personal development of the participants in the workshop. For me, the great takeaway was this finance guy. He started seeing the problems of NHIA from a very completely different perspective. And there were a couple, there was actually the technology guy, he started with the very formal questions. He also got it, okay, you want to find out about the person and not necessarily answer survey questions so you can tabulate it, right? So that sort of abductive, fuzzy feeling part of it, I felt really resonated with them, and they got it, and hopefully they're going on with it. But the other big win was, and I think being able to get a prototype. And we were able to build something really simple. I think Shilpi took that to the director. She saw it, and I remember she called us, Ashley and myself, to come into her office. We came in, and she was demoing it to other people, other persons, saying, "Listen, we have this thing now. You can do that, and it renews it right away, and it's going." And she went on and became a proponent for it. And I think in one of the meetings with her, she was like, I really had no idea what this was going to come up with. It was cheap, and so I said, go ahead and do it. But in a week, if this is what you guys can do, this is something. But I knew they had gone through the process. They understood all the different things they had put in there was user informed. And so if they decided to scale it up and work on it, it would probably succeed. And so that was being able to use that approach to very quickly get to a prototype that was informed by user insights, and have it available for people to use, I think, was the big difference. Because what they had been doing before was a lot of user research, a lot of paper generation. And you read a paper and you kind of understand the problem, but it's not very clear, okay, how do we move to the next step of actually solving it? So I'm going to stop there, my time is up, and then ask any questions that you may have. Yeah. Going through the slides to see if this, and maybe Shilpi, you can talk about a lot of the change management stuff that happened before and then maybe during the things as well. You have a question? Yeah.
Thank you. My name is David.
Yeah.
Particularly we socialize about how bureaucratic our systems are, government systems, and how sometimes there's lots of resistance to change.
Yeah.
And how sometimes you get lots of repelling efforts or repelling like effects from lots of people when you want to do something new, from something innovative.
Yeah.
And you experience that, how are you able to go about that?
Okay. So I have Shupi answer that because she was there. She was our in person. So like he was talking about, you have to get buy-in at the top management, right? Shupi had the top managers here, but she still had to convince them. Because it's even when you get a top manager, the people who are actually going to do the work or going to be in charge of the work, I mean, they have 20,000 other priorities, right? So you have to get their perspective. But it's persistence, and for me, I think being able to show that prototype at the end of the week, that seemed to solve the problem, when they looked at it, quickly became a very easy sell for them to go on and try and convince other people. But maybe there were other things you were doing behind the scenes that helped.
So one of the things was to not call it design thinking at all.
Yeah.
Because when people hear design thinking, they think it's jargon, and they think something like a fad, and they don't want to get on it. So I always pitched it as a prototyping workshop. We'll go out in the field, and we'll come back, and we'll build something, and we'll come back with something that we'll actually build. The trouble is the design thinking that when you actually go into the process, you don't know what they're going to come up with anything at all.
Yeah.
It's a risk you take, but for me, the design thinking exercise is very much a change management intervention. We're getting people out there, we're getting people trying to hear the members, trying to hear the voice of the staff. For me, if that alone could have been achieved, I would have been happy. So the prototypes and everything was just a bonus on top of it. So it was good that we came out with physical prototypes, and there was not just a renewal thing, there was also this authentication piece for the providers.
Yeah.
And we used those really basic stuff all the way up to board approval. We tested it even at the board meeting. So in the beginning it was like, just let us do it. But later on we have now done this exercise twice more.
Yeah.
But now people ask us to do it because they've seen what came out of it.
Yeah. Thank you. So a lot of it is really understanding the culture of the place in which you're going to do this, right? And then being able to give people baby steps up to it, right? So, call it something that they're familiar with, something that they're not going to question and say, okay, why are we trying to do this radically different things? But again, it comes back to think of design thinking as an approach, right, to problem solving. So, taking whatever they're doing, but, showing her maybe we can approach this thing in this way and then using that. Let's do these three.
Okay. David, you mentioned severally about research in regards to renewals.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any research on new applicants as well. If you did any research on new applicants, that's one.
Yeah.
Two, you mentioned also something on fraud.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to find out how did the fraud bits came about, if they were able to explain to you.
Okay. You're going to have to come stand next to me. Yeah.
That's two. The last one also, you mentioned about customers, based on the research, you realized that customers had the perception that the energy, when they do the registration or the services that were provided to them, was not
It wasn't a
was
bit.
a cheaper service.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cheap. So I want to know if that perception from the customers were true.
Okay. You're going to have to come down. So I can answer that much. She can give much better answers to that because she's been involved. So we did 1 week and we kind of parachuted out, or the other way, we just flew out, we parachuted in and just left. And then she had to keep it going, which they did a really good job of.
So new member registration was not tackled as part of this design thinking exercise, but NHI has separately commissioned a lot of research on barriers to new member registration. Was that your question?
Yeah.
I asked this question because currently they are not registering, they are not doing any registration for anyone who wants to have a card.
Okay.
They are not doing that.
Registrations.
Personally myself, I tried to, register the card, and then every touch point we went to, they said they didn't have materials, which was, I didn't understand that. So I just thought that maybe based on the research, you guys might have more information why they didn't have materials for registration.
Yeah.
The research did not focus on why NHI cannot purchase materials, thankfully.
Yeah.
But the new registration point, NHI has been in financial troubles for quite long. There have been issues with delivering consumables, and that's actually the reason why this renewal was done in the first place, because renewals also consume consumables. In terms of footfalls for NHIA, we have almost 85% renewals. So for 100 people walking into our office, 85 of them tend to be renewing their policies. So from the project perspective, and therefore from the design thinking perspective, we focused on renewals, because at least if we can divert those people away from the offices and stop them from using these consumables, then more resources can be then devoted to buying the consumable for new member registrations. There's also a link to government's Ghana card, which is now expected to become the source of member identity going forward, and expected to replace NHI's card as the proof of having a policy. So there are those angles which I cannot comment on. But just if you want to know why people do not register, number one reason, yes, is the lack of consumables. But there's also quality of care issues at healthcare providers. So these are really sort of very complex issues that did come up in our research, and there is an education awareness aspect to it. But there's only so much that one can do when one is focused on the So that's number one. What was the second question?
The
For-
perception of the service,
Well.
the cheap service.
And with that, I was said, when the lady was talking about that with NHI, you're going to get the cheaper drugs and all of that.
Yes. So NHI over time has introduced a lot of exemptions for certain categories of people. For example, indigents, pregnant women can enroll for free, which is why a perception is built over time that the scheme is meant only for those categories of people. Actually, NHI is open for all legal residents of Ghana, and it is served in all hospitals, government, private, etc. But this perception has really taken hold. This came up quite a lot during our research. Unfortunately, part of the reason this perception has taken hold is because the messaging the providers give to the members when they go to access care. So for instance, even though the scheme pays for 540 medicines, the provider will say that the scheme pays for only 2. So this is quite a challenge. Part of it comes down to NHI's financial troubles and things like that. So that's an ongoing thing. But from our perspective, all you can do is empower the customer with the right information, and so that they can challenge or they can involve our staff that they're facing problems on the claim side. And usually our staff, which is nearly 3,000 out in the all over Ghana, they're quite embedded in the communities. So they know they're very good relationships with the providers, they're good relationship with the members, because the scheme's history was that it started as a community-based health insurance scheme before it got centralized. So that legacy is there. So from our perspective, the intervention is more education, more awareness, more empowerment. And also the USST menu that was developed, it also has information on medicines and benefits covered. With our call center number, and our call center is now receiving a lot of calls, people calling and asking, oh well, I thought that this medicine is not covered, is it? And then we say, no, it is, so please go and tell it about it. So it's a iterative process, it's not easy, but I mean, more of education awareness is the research.
Oh, you skipped. Yeah.
So I'm interested in after the ideation process. I'm sure a lot of ideas came around.
Yeah.
What framework? How did you decide what to prototype? I understand.
Yeah.
And also the final prototype, because the projector was not
Yeah.
see. Can you describe how it looked like? Was it high fidelity or low fidelity?
Yeah. Yeah, so there are a couple of techniques you can use to narrow down on what you want to prototype. I think we ended up doing a voting piece. So one thing we did, we created these personas, for the different scenarios that, we created these personas based on the interviews that we had done. And so based on that, we were able to narrow on which personas we wanted to solve a problem for. And so I think they picked 2 or 3 of those. And then from that persona, that's when a lot of the ideation happened. So then at the end, we looked at that persona, the issues and problems that they had, and then the team voted on which of those solutions they thought would actually be able to address the issues from that persona's perspective. Which is a key thing to do when you're doing these exercises. Like, once you've done your user insight research, create those personas, because then we created them, we named them, and so, people became advocates for those personas. And so when they were dealing with the problem, they'll say, but was it Amma Baby? Adra Baby. Adra Baby was one of them personas. People would argue and say, this will not work for Adra Baby, or this will work for Adra Baby. And then in terms of the prototypes, they ended up being, so we kind of went through from low fidelity to a high fidelity one. So for the USSD, we had like paper mockups, but then we ended up having a menu that was actually on a smartphone that people could use and play with. Yeah. Okay, let me go up this way. Yeah.
So I understood the USSD menu was really one of the key ideas that came from the design thinking. If you could just summarize really the process before. So from what I understand, it was you go to an NHIS office or you have the district offices.
Yeah.
And after, so USSD, did you actually implement the app or not in the end? And you spoke about call center as well. So is now call center also a renewal channel.
Yeah.
Secondly, how do you push people to use the USSD? I'm working on microinsurance as well, and I think insurance is still today something it's hard to really have people voluntarily say, oh, I will renew my insurance.
Yeah.
So what channels do you use? Thirdly, on the USSD menu, would you say now we are still at the early stage, the early adopters, or do you see it really becoming mass? And I don't know if you can share some percentage of renewals that you get through USSD. And fourth, what's the shortcode so that we can test the USSD menu?
Yeah.
We have a test shortcode at the moment. It's *842 *10#. It's subcoding one. Try it.
Yeah.
Was it
*842?
*10#.
Is it working at all networks?
All networks.
Yeah.
Except Tigo's. Tigo's haven't got.
Yeah. *842.
I think it says on Tigo, it says external application down.
Yeah, Tigo. Maybe
Okay. Yeah.
Tigo has its own insurance scheme.
Yeah. Is it *842#?
*842 *10#.
Oh, *10.
2550 for Tigo.
*842 *10 hash, right? Yeah.
So the process before, so let me just dial back a little bit of what the actual problem is. The problem is not about collecting money.
Yeah.
A renewal is basically about collecting money, right? We already know who the person is, we know how much premium the person needs to pay.
Can I quickly talk about the shortcode?
Sure.
It looks too cumbersome.
Yes. It's a
Is
test
there any-
code.
It's a test code.
It's a test code?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it means that eventually you're going to have something that is...
It is getting, yes.
Yeah. It's a lot of iterations, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So previously the issue was the person renews, the person pays, and the digital payment aspect was not the problem. The problem was once the person pays and goes to the hospital, how will that facility verify the person's membership? That was a real issue. So what we were doing originally was that if the person goes, that their card is then physically stamped with an expiry date. So that when the person goes to the facility reads the expiry date, then it says, okay, you're a valid member, therefore you can access. And the reason this is the case because we have 4,000 facilities in Ghana accepting NHIS. So a lot of them are not with coverage and many of them are offline. So that was a big challenge. So when we developed the USSD app, the way it is delivered is that the person still goes to the office. But instead of joining the queue to do all the stamping and stuff, it said, do you have mobile money? Yes, okay, we'll help you to do it. So we deliver it from at the branch using our staff. And then if they happen to be young, if they happen to be digitally literate, if they look excited, we tell them, when you go back to your community, tell your people that you don't have to come, you can show them how to do it. That's how we try to propagate it. Because, as you rightly said, people are not going to get up and dial code for themselves. I mean, I hardly remember how to recharge.
You have your charger?
Hacked like that.
You have your charger?
So people form a very large part of this process. So we've been piloting at one of the districts in Eastern region. At the moment, more than 50% of people renewing are through the mobile channel, which is pretty okay because considering mobile money is only about 50%. Maybe a bit higher in a certain amount, but yeah, it looks okay. But it's all led by our staff.
So, did you have
So
one?
you have interest in very long queues in your offices, right? To discourage people from waiting and using
Yes,
it.
so it was about
Sockets aren't
actually
working
it was
anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's
kind
true.
of rough.
I mean, yeah, that's okay. We don't need
Yeah, we
it.
tell the people that you either join a 3-hour queue or you do it in 3 minutes, you know, you choose. And that's how it happens. Before we launch in any district, we have to also launch this digital authentication for all healthcare providers. Not just in that district, but also in neighboring districts, because it's portable schemes. People can be paying at their home and then turning up at any facility in the country, and those people, the hospitals need to authenticate them. So that's also why USSD. But there are also 700 facilities with no mobile network. So there's a separate offline solution for them. So it's the authentication side which you
Okay, so I want to applaud you on the job done. I think the letter that we have gotten from design thinking is, equally allows you to explore other opportunities or see other loopholes. So today we're looking at the end user, which is the customer, the average Ghanaian that we're selling this product to. How about the third party user, like a firm like mine, who would depend on an ID card for confirmation from NHIA? You mentioned the use of the biometric system to reduce the fraudulent IDs in the system. How are parties like mine type going to confirm or concur that these IDs were actually fraudulent and they're being taken out of the system when they come to Nigeria?
Yeah.
So,
So that's on the provider.
So the issue of fraud is about two things: identity fraud at healthcare providers at the point of claim, and random claims submitted by providers. So it's not so much about identifying IDs that are.
So you guys continue your
That's-
Q&A for a couple more minutes, and then we're going to bring
you
everybody
can get
from
1 year
upstairs
of
down.
free,
Okay.
And then
1
we'll
year
continue.
of
Arne can
comprehensive
continue his Q&A
healthcare
from this
cover
morning.
diagnostic
Okay.
medicines included for $5. So I think
Sure.
I'm sure it's more expensive to fake an ID. You know, you might as well get a real one. So I know there are fake IDs in the system, but that isn't really a source of our fraud.
I'm saying this because NHIA in the past had an app to authenticate IDs like GBI, which
Still have it.
actually never worked. Today, yeah.
You make a lot of money off it, so I'm sure it works.
Today you would have an individual with multiple NHIS ID cards, the same face but different names. Now, if
How
about,
often does this happen?
I think I get it very often from my end.
But how often?
In recent 3 months, I've had close to like 7 or 9 cards that has
Out
more.
of?
Out of a lot of cards. The challenge here
But you
is,
share those cards, it doesn't make interesting for us to do.
yeah, I shared 3 with you guys and never got a feedback. With NHIS and never got a feedback. Yeah. The challenge today is if he can come in with an ID that calls him Damien today and can come in 6 months later with an ID that calls him Isaac, and I don't have a system to actually track it, then I equally will not have the same guys sitting there after 6 months to actually detect that this is the same person that was here like 6 months ago. So then that ID is always going to slide. Now, there's a biometric system which is supposed to actually tell these fingerprints are already in the system. During your exercise, I'm pretty sure you saw some of these ones and took them out of the 40%. So he started by saying at least out of the 100 Ghanaians in the population, there are 40% of them on NHIS.
Yeah.
So practically during this campaign, we saw some of these ID cards that were actually not accurate and we were supposed to have taken them out of the system. What I'm saying is, for third-party users like us, how do we know these cards were actually taken out of the system? So when they come to us, then we can tell, okay, these ones are not supposed to be in
Yeah.
the system.
So that's on the authentication side.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, the issue of fraudulent cards exists, but it is not a village problem. If you have had issues with fraudulent cards, the right way is to send it to us. If you've done it, not received a response, send it to us again. Maybe give it to me, and I'll okay, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
NHR is a health insurance company. Its job is not to give citizen identity.
Yeah.
It's a job that has come to assume over a period of time because of failures at other ends,
Yeah.
which hopefully will be addressed going forward with the successful launch of Untitled. So we
Yeah.
expect that this problem to go away. The biometric system is only 5 years old, and it took quite a long time to weed out its teething troubles and to get it to a stage where it is reliable. The cards are valid for 5 years, so yes, it is possible that users who have multiple identities, which we just hope will weed out over time. So I acknowledge that there is an issue, but like I said, our main job is to cover Ghanaians for health insurance. So it's possible that this type of an issue of ID card being fraudulent and third-party uses of it doesn't feature quite heavily on management priorities.